Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining our SWANA webinar today, Using Data to Power the Circular Economy. I am James Swart, Director of Special Projects here at SWANA, and I am excited to be your host for today. A couple logistics items before we get started. If you have questions during today's presentation, please use the Zoom Q&A feature to submit those. Amy and Geoff have saved some time at the end of today's discussion to address any questions that you have. We are also recording today's session. So as an attendee, you will get a copy of the recording sent to you via email. And if you have colleagues who are unable to join today, this webinar will be able to be downloaded from the SWANA website. Everyone who is attending live will also receive one continuing education PDH credit. Those will be credited to your SWANA account following the webinar. So with that, it's my pleasure to introduce our two speakers for today. Amy Lestition Burke, Chief Executive Officer of the Solid Waste Association of North America, SWANA, and Geoff Aardsma, VP of Market Development for AMCS. Amy and Geoff, I will turn it over to you.
Thanks so much. And that was James Swart. He leads Director of Special Projects here at SWANA. So we appreciate him setting this webinar up and helping us, Geoff and I, get this going. We have an exciting agenda today. Right now you're meeting us, and that is key, right? I have been serving in the role at SWANA as CEO for almost 2 years now, and I have learned so much, and I'm so excited to have this conversation with Geoff to ask him some of the questions that people have asked me, some of things I've observed, and for us to have this conversation, it'll be really, really great. SWANA is an association that represents both the public and private sectors in the waste and recycling industry. And as I like to say it, we are handling anything that comes to us at the end of life. So materials management. So whatever that may be, someone clearing out their garage, their basement, or just the day-to-day, our members are there and finding the solutions for what to do. They are always thinking on their feet and tackling any issue. So it's great to have this conversation. And I know, Geoff, you are right there with us supporting our members and the work that we do. So Geoff, introduce yourself.
Thanks so much, Amy, and thanks to SWANA for the great opportunity for AMCS to share some insights with your constituency and your members. We're really excited to engage in a conversation, hear what people are challenged with today, hopefully help find some nuggets of information and insights that can help them navigate those challenges. This is it's a community after all. I've been with AMCS for almost 5 years, but I've been in the industry for 20 years.
Oh my
and
goodness, Geoff.
I've
Wow.
yeah. I've worked nearly all areas of it. I started actually in the regulated waste side of the market, post-collection, working with landfills and transfer stations, dealing, with the bulk waste, collected across residential, commercial, industrial generators. Spent a lot of time in municipal programs, generating sustainability, consulting approaches and closed loop waste programs to help manage complex institutional and industrial wastes. And for about the past 10 years, I've been on the technology side of the business, working with public and private entities on deploying IoT solutions focused on logistics management and route optimization, business intelligence. And with AMCS, I'll share a little bit more here in a little bit, really a wider approach to the challenges that the industry faces and practical solutions that we can employ to help the great members of our industry do the things that they do better every day.
Oh, I love that. Better every day. Yes, that's what we want to do, right? And certainly at SWANA, our mission is to advance waste as a resource. And that is something that we are trying to do with our workforce. So let's go over the agenda real quick. You did meet us. Then we are going to have, Geoff's going to set the stage a little bit for our conversation based on that wealth of experience and expertise. I think that'll help the conversation. And then we're going to have a chat, a fireside chat. We should have put up the fires, you know, that you can have up to set that
But in
stage.
cooler mornings these
We could
days,
have
yeah,
been
we need the
sipping our
fireplace.
cocoa and coffee, right? Here, but talking about the industry and talking about the opportunities, the challenges, and where there can be solutions, which will be really exciting. I know James said we're going to take Q&A at the end, but Geoff and I actually throwing a curveball in there. We discussed about a minute before we started that we're going to more than happy to take questions throughout. So put them in there. We both have the chat open. We want this to be fluid and try to answer the question in real time as it's applicable to what we're talking about. So I think with that, I'll turn it over to Geoff to help set that stage here.
Wonderful. Yeah, and thank you. And echoing the conversational nature that we'd love to have here with the attendees, and thank you to everyone attending live. It's interesting times that we're living in today. We have the opportunity to really connect so many parts of the industry and our operations to our customers, whatever those customers might mean to you. And I'll continue to remind myself that we probably have private and public entities here attending, so we'll try to cover both. But it's been a lot of fun. My time at AMCS has really opened my eyes to the entirety of the ecosystem that we live in, and I'll dive into a little bit more of what that means. But primarily, we're aiming to enable the circular economy as material managers. And I love that term. We're not the waste and recycling industry. We're actually material managers. All this material has a purpose, a destination, something that it can be, or a responsible way to handle it to ensure public safety, environmental safety. But we've expanded that to be material managers focusing on enabling growth, on enabling efficiency for our private and public sector customers, really focusing on that margin number. And that's really an efficiency of how we're using the resources from a financial perspective as well, right? Which has a lot to do with the longevity of our services, the ability to expand and add services. All of that comes into play. When I talk about the expansion of the ecosystem, we often think about waste and recycling services or material management services as transportation and disposal, right? T&D, for those that have been in the industry for a long time, you've got a vehicle and you are picking up material, you're taking it to a place of processing, be it a transfer station, a MRF, an organics facility, a landfill, a waste energy facility. And what's funny is how much work goes into the out of sight, out of mind, experience that I think a lot of people take for granted. I always find it amazing when, the garbage truck on my street shows up at the exact same time every single week. And I know how much work goes into making sure that that happens. And my time at AMCS has allowed me to really see what goes into that. And so we have systems that connect the management of all the services that our customers and the industry provides. And that's a bit of what we'll talk about today, or what are the demands that the industry is aiming to meet? What are the services that they're gearing up to offer to them? And then operationally, how do you do that? Because you have a lot to manage. You have containers and assets in the field that are at your customer locations. You have customers who have to be educated on exactly how to use those services. What do I put in what bin? How much service do I have available to me? When is my next service? A lot of communication goes into just that customer experience before a truck even shows up. And then, of course, you've got the moving assets that will come and collect that material. And you've got the drivers and the trucks. And there's so much that goes into making sure that those go out every day. We focus a lot on asset maintenance and making sure that preventative maintenance and vehicle inspection reports are executed because you want to make sure that your drivers, one of your most valuable assets, are safe. When they're out on the road, you want to make sure that the truck is in a state that it can complete the route that it's on or complete the jobs that you've sent it to do. And then, of course, you've got a facility. Once you've picked all that material up, you've got a facility who's going to receive that. And that facility is interested in, when is the truck arriving? What is the truck bringing? How do I deal with the material that's going to land on my floor or past my gate? And so there's a number of different aspects that go into that. And of course, processing the material, whether it's organics or a MRF or a scrap metal facility, you know, there's so much that goes into the production of an end result, especially when we're talking about fueling the circular economy, taking a waste material and getting it into a state that can be reintroduced or sold as a valuable input to a manufacturing process so it can enter the economy again. One of the things we'll talk about today is the concept of an autonomous MRF, right? How do we make recycling more accessible by automating all of the variables that we deal with inside of a recycling stream? It's a really interesting topic, constantly moving as consumer products shift and change. The introduction of EPR legislation all impacts that. And then, of course, once we have the material and we've separated it and we've cleansed it, right, and we've put it into the right packaging and ready to be sold, it enters the next stage of its life and it goes out into the world. And there's another type of transportation that'll take it to its next destination. There's another consumer of that material that will buy that material, right? We often think about the incoming as an accounts receivable or something you're paying for services. On the other side, it's accounts payable. You're selling that material, you're getting paid for it. And that's a different type of business relationship that you have to manage. So it's really kind of fascinating there. And then, of course, getting that material into a state where it can compete with virgin material, right? With the raw material. And how do we use all of these things in our ecosystem to increase the demand for the materials that we're trying to market and sell, and ultimately help us move that supply that we work so hard to capture up front. Moving through all of the technologies and the systems that facilitate just that little life cycle of a recycled material is amazing. And there's a unique story that everyone that participates in that has in the journey, and so many opportunities for us to take more efficient operations, reduce the carbon impact, provide more consistent service, provide a better customer experience, a more digital customer experience, and support it all through efficient systems that are scalable and can flex with changing conditions, so we don't lock ourselves in to a state that we can't stay up with the times, right? Our world is changing faster than ever, especially with the introduction of AI and technology and how that's shifting the world that we service here inside the industry. And so that's really our, you know, from my perspective, and Amy, really interested in the problem statement that you'll present to us today. That's our problem statement is how do we deal with all of the variables, all of the business cases, all of the opportunities that are out there? How do we capture those, set our industry up to execute upon it, and continue to introduce technology that will fuel the more efficient delivery of those services. That's what gets me up every morning. That's what we work on every day. Really excited to explore that, Amy, with you and our great audience here on our call.
Yeah, that's what got me excited too about joining this industry. I don't have the 20 years, I have 2. But certainly as a consumer, understanding, or the lack of understanding of what this industry does, right? And the complexity of it and everything you just outlined, right? It's not just putting it in the recycling in the container. There's a whole afterlife after that we want to achieve. And I love how you put that, right? It's like, we gathered all these products. We spent all this time making the product to make sure it's recyclable, and it's actually recyclable in a majority of places, right? Not in a minority. but that we can actually take it and have it be reused, right, on that back end. And I don't think we think about that. It's just like, oh, this is recyclable. Of course, we're doing something with it.
It's got to have
And
a reasonable end market. There's got to be
yes,
somebody who
yes.
wants to buy it. Yeah.
Right, right. And I think for me, that really was driven home when I was up in Alaska, the end market, just based on their location, and just more physical barriers, right, compared to other areas in the United States or Canada, related to that. And I know our problem statement here is, what are the challenges, or what even like statistics, right? Has SWANA been hearing from members in the industry? And we've heard a lot. And our members are benefiting certainly from the rapid technology, which is fantastic. And that's including AI and automation and sensors, and all of that can increase the efficiencies and capabilities. We have an upcoming conference coming, Archon, and we are planning a keynote panel focused on innovations. I'm so excited about it because there is so much happening right now, especially around what you mentioned in terms of the MRF technologies. We also are going to showcase innovations around methane sensing technologies, advancements in landfills, and waste to energy management. And this innovation keynote is taking place on Friday, November 14th. And I'm so excited to showcase what the work of our members have been working on and to utilize these technologies to make things better, as you said, right? We all know the potential of technology to help us re-innovate and develop new resources, and we need to keep enhancing our members' understanding of these technologies and how they can help them. As you said, Geoff, there are so many variables, and I think that that can be the challenge, to plan and then align in those timelines. And if we are really in this rapid era of change in our technologies, how do we know how to use all the data and technology available? I think that that just kind of gets people's like, whoa, I don't know what to do here, and those growing pains. And maybe we should be used to this by now. I mean, I guess we've always been reinventing new things. This industry has been on the forefront of automation and trying to apply it, but it's still always like, what's that new thing? And how can we apply it? And that adoption of the new technology, I think perhaps without sufficient training or maybe infrastructure, can restrict how effective that technology is. So I often think that maybe if an organization lacks that capacity or maybe that knowledge to interpret how to effectively implement the technology, or maybe the data coming out of the technology, that is some of the challenges we're hearing. So I often think that it's really important for individuals to work with that tech provider and form that partnership. I know we do here at SWANA, but how to leverage and to keep leveraging the technology, the data, so it's so accessible and that it can be used not just internally, but also externally, right? The data. And it can't be transactional. It's got to tell that story. I mean, the numbers have to bring to life that story, which is really important. As I mentioned, I'm visiting members across the country. I'm visiting so many facilities, and I'm seeing how they access data. They let me see like a lot of these screens. I'm not even sure what all the data is they're collecting. I often ask, explain it to me, drill it down for me. And when I'm touring, I also know that the use of AI is making a difference, which is awesome. But I've also seen the flip side in terms of how some facilities have not yet embraced technology and just don't know where to start. So I'm excited today to learn about more from you about how data technology can be accessible and empowering. And from my perspective, that we have so much potential and to just keep advancing and improving, right? So I think wherever our members are, wherever facilities are on their journey, we we are here, right? And we're going to answer their questions and share how to leverage data, right, in that daily work. So I'm going to turn it back to you with this question, right? I think there's opportunities people want to pursue. I see it when I talk to people, like it would be so cool to be able to do X or Y or to have that autonomous MRF. But there's so many challenges maybe in pursuing. What are you seeing in this industry?
Yeah, it's interesting. One of the industry's greatest assets are the people that work in it. And actually, that's where we recommend technology explorations start. So you certainly want a vision, you want to have a view into what you want to impact. Maybe you have some view into the inefficiency you think are in your business or with handling your customers or barriers to growth, whatever your particular goal might be. But understanding the people in your business, the people that are going to be impacted by technology. And what does that mean for their role? What's the goal of their role, right? Because often a role might change, right? One of the things that technology does is it enables people to be more efficient, but that's not always a happy outcome for somebody who's been used to doing a lot of repeated tasks, right? So if your job
Yes.
satisfaction is you get through the day because you do a lot of repeated tasks that may be mundane, may be boring, but you can do them, right? And now technology is going to come in, and the ideal application of technology is to automate the repeatable tasks, the easy to complete tasks. And now you leave your people with more complex problems to solve, or maybe they're managing the system that's taking care of those repeated tasks. That's a tough transition depending on who you have, right? So understanding your people, understanding their roles, understanding the impact of potential technology changes to them is a really important first step. We see so many technology implementations really challenged by change management, right? And making sure that you have a champion, that people are prepared with all the answers to the scary questions. What is this going to mean to me? Are you working me out of a job? Is this going to make my job harder? Is this going to make my job redundant, right? Answering those questions up front. And then being confident in the business processes. So one of the challenges with technology is you are replacing inherent knowledge from people who have experience, who've been doing it for decades. You don't have to tell them what to do or answer a question every time they run into a challenge. They just know it. Now you're going to ask technology to take care of that and take care of running those very vital business processes that are critical to trucks going out in the morning, trucks getting over the scale efficiently, right? Your customers getting the service they want on the day they want it at the time they expect, right? All those things still have to click. So understanding your people and understanding your business processes in light of the vision you have with technology, like those are two areas you really want to be secure.
Yeah. I think that the people is such a strong point there. And you often hear those headlines, right? Like AI is taking people out of things, and you still need people there. You still need it to be set up correctly and to run correctly. And I think especially with data, is it putting out what you wanted it to put out? Maybe it did it like the start of the project but maybe not at the end because things got tweaked or whatnot. The people cannot be underestimated. It's such a great point, especially in this day and age with it.
Yeah. Well, and I'm glad you brought up the data because, a lot of technology is in pursuit of data, and you can get a lot of data. You can have, any number of sources of data, but then it can get overwhelming. So what are you going to do with the data, right? We had a webinar last year, and one of our favorite CEOs said, I can get all the reports in the world, right? But a report's not going to cash the check. What am I going to do with that report? What
Yes.
actions am I going to take with that report, with those insights? What further questions do I need to ask to get to the point that it impacts my bottom line? And we use that often. He'll know who he is. But how are you gonna cash the check? Because ultimately that's how you're going to justify an investment in technology, right? You'll have a
Yes.
business case that says, if we implement this route, somebody in the chat asked about a routing solution. If we implement this routing solution, we'll be able to meet the growing demand for like we want to start curbside recycling in a different part of town, right? We want to increase accessibility to curbside recycling, but we can't afford another truck, right? So we're going to implement routing software so that we can add more customers with the trucks we have, right? And so you got to think through that whole process, because spinning up a routing software isn't going to make that possible for you, right? For example, that's probably a really simple one, but understanding your why and what is the impact to your business, and then tracing it back into how are you going to use the data that that system produces for you to make sure that the people using it actually deliver that results. And these are all great questions to ask and kind of storyboard and work through with your organization before you get too far down the road with technology. Now, you brought up work closely with the vendor. Education is another great way to start asking or knowing what questions should I ask. And that's always a great place to start with your vendors, right? So if you're looking at a technology, ask them how they would qualify you. How would you look at my company and know if you're a good fit for me? Right? If you don't know what questions to ask, and everybody might not, I can promise you that the people that are in charge of selling software know what questions they want to ask you, but have that open conversation with them, right? And then you can make it an interactive one. You can explore different parts of your organization. You can drill down a little bit more, but I wouldn't be shy to say, I don't know necessarily what questions to ask. What would you ask me?
I love how you flip that around. And we've been talking a lot about, efficiencies, and I think data has improved efficiencies in the collection routes. It helps in understanding trends in the tonnage data and can inform operational changes. What are the biggest trends driving the changes in collections, recycling, organics, and disposal operations right now? What are you seeing?
I think the increased adoption of technology is really doing it. We're seeing a lot of improvements in the way that our industry connects digitally with their customers. There's a lot of communication that has to to be in place around the services being provided, the costs of the services, how to pay for the services, how to best utilize the services, right? What is accepted in my recycling program? What's not accepted in my recycling program? I was reading a press release today about the opening of recycling depots in the state of Oregon as part of their implementation of the EPR legislation. It's amazing the amount of communication that has to go out in order to inform people, right? If we have a goal that every Oregonian is going to have a recycling depot within 15 miles of their house, that's a lot of people to let know where these depots are and how you can utilize them. How do I use them with what's in my curbside container? What's picked up on the curb, right? So there's a really fast shifting narrative there. And so all of the digital ways that we can communicate, we're seeing a lot of more communication using social media to help educate, the fun, 15-second or 5-second videos that make recycling fun, or deal with the tough to answer questions with consumer packaging today. What do I do with my gable top container? What do I do with my, the mixed aluminum and plastic, flexible container that I've got, right? All of those things complicate recycling. So all of that digital communication, digital payments, we see that being a real mover in the industry today.
Yeah, and I also think that the data, and to your point with the CEO, right? Like, our members need to be able to take this data and in many instances, yes, educate the consumers, but also educate the regulators, the new legislators coming in, and they're not familiar with what we do, and they don't understand perhaps what this new technology, if that, we're advocating for to get in the budget, what it really means, right? Have you seen it come across any of that? I know I've heard stories of it as people are trying to make the case to get new technology put into the budget and approved, not only by the legislatures, but maybe even perhaps it has to go to the community depending upon where they live.
Yeah, well, and I think educating on the end markets that you're marketing to and how technology will impact your ability to increase the value of the material, right? It's so hard to run recycling when we don't have a consistent and growing end market that is willing to take it, was willing to see value in it. Then you just
Mhm.
end up with more supply, less demand, right? We all
Right,
took economics. We understand how that's going to work. I think it's a constant threat to our industry and one that needs to always be folded in, right? So why do we talk about recycling right is so important? Why do we talk about having the ability to forecast volumes and when you're selling material, communicate downstream? What is that supplier going to be receiving? How can they prepare for it? All of that goes into the decisions of, do I take in more recycling material into my manufacturing
Mhm.
process, or do I take more virgin material? And so we always want to be able to focus it on driving an increase in that end market. But it starts with it, all of those upstream steps
Right.
that I mentioned before. And then that starts making the business case easier, right? It's always easiest to make recycling accessible or to invest in technology when we know that we're feeding a demand on the other end, on that on
Mhm.
that buy side. Um, Maybe my perspective, I'm curious what you're seeing as far as people looking at budget cycles, the technologies they want to implement. What are you hearing from your constituency about the challenges they're facing?
Yeah, so many, some are able to make the case, I should say, right, in terms of getting it into the budget. Others are looking towards grants, and
Mhm.
those grants could be coming from the state, that the state has for the local jurisdictions in terms of making the case. And it's these, the leaders of these facilities or the whole solid waste department really trying to look for all ways to bring in the ability to advance what they're doing, right? And have that greater technology. And I especially think with the collectors, right? Especially since the collectors are on the Bureau of Labor Statistics in the United States as the fourth most dangerous job, how important that is, right? That these jurisdictions are looking for better ways to keep those individuals safe and coming home to their families at the end of the day and getting those fleets and those trucks with better technology that's out there, right? And the upgrades there. So they are looking, they are seeking things. And certainly at SWANA, we are pushing out as much as we can to help them do that, and also offering education to your point in terms of how they can tell that story to that regulator, to the legislator, in a way, right? We might be able to analyze numbers and whatnot, but then crafting that into the story that maybe pulls at the heartstrings a little bit, that might be a little out of our comfort zone, not what we thought we would be doing, right, in these jobs. So that's what
Yeah.
we're trying to work on. But I do love that like entrepreneur spirit of these members where they're really trying to um, search if they can't get it in their budget, what else is out there and what else is available.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that connection to the community is so important. Back to the business case of how is it going to impact the community, or if you're a private company, how does it increase your competitive advantage? We see a lot of analysis of the material stream and finding ways to take what was kind of one size fits all service, pick it up at the curb, turn it more into a value-based service. And data can be a big help there. We're seeing a lot of private companies investing in sustainability specialists that are bringing
Oh, wow.
data
Love
to
that.
life for their
Yeah.
individual customers, right? Helping them with their recycling habits. Now, of course, that's more applicable at universities, school districts, large institutions, things like that. But it can also be really good for communities as a whole, right? So communities dealing with the changing recycling programs or the introduction of a food waste collection program. That's a lot for them to take in. We find that technology on trucks that are able to help identify if materials are in line with the acceptance criteria, or if there's kind of contaminants, can help target that outreach. and drive those stories to make sure that people understand the services that are available for them. One thing you and I talked about in our preparation for this call is, there continues to be a bit of an undertone of disbelief in recycling or composting overall, right? And that can come
Right.
from so many different places.
We
We
did
find this
focus
kind
on
of
this. Yeah.
we find that this targeted outreach, this, hey, we notice that you and your neighbors, or however it comes out, are not properly using the services, and let us educate you. When people see that it's being measured, when they see that somebody's interested in having a conversation about making a recycling program more effective, it increases that belief, which we know is true, that recycling does work, right? And of course, like, we see it every day. We manage the majority of recycling materials, goes across a variety of our systems in North America. We see the volumes, we see the outbound volumes, we see that it's working. The average American or Canadian doesn't get that benefit of visibility, right? They just see it going into a truck and they're not sure what happens next. They saw something on the news or they saw something online that caused them to question it. So that community or that personal engagement that's driven from knowing what to talk to them about, we find that to be a really interesting investment that a lot of entities are starting to make.
Yeah, and we've seen that too across the board. That education piece, right? Going back to that, like to your point in Oregon, now they're rolling something out new, but we're going back to just the basics. Like, is this getting actually recycled? And when I was
Exactly.
at SWANA's event down in Tennessee, I went to another event outside of our event, and when they found out what I did, that's what everybody was asking me. Like, are things getting really recycled? Should I bother? And I just was like, oh my gosh, yes, you know.
Exactly.
And I think that brings me, I don't want time to run out before we talk about the autonomous MRF. What do you see as those challenges and opportunities with the adoption of this and the operation of it? I'm excited by it. I'm excited by like new things and seeing new things myself personally. But what do you see, Geoff?
Yeah. Well, first, one of the most exciting things we're seeing is that the case to put automation, robotics, these modern systems into MRFs, the business case seems to be becoming easier to make. We're seeing more and more announcements of new facilities that have been retrofitted or sited with the latest technology and kind of celebrating that. It seems to come out every week. There's another new recycling facility across North America that's opening, and so that means increased accessibility to recycling with more throughput, hopefully increased accessibility by being able to handle some of those harder to handle materials. For the operators, it's a more complex system to manage. So now they have more things that could potentially break, right? So we think a lot about
Mm,
the asset maintenance of those plants. We think a lot about the externalities of the material coming in that could impact the productivity of that plant, right? So, again, not to go back to contamination, but identifying the materials that shouldn't end up at that facility.
mm,
We've done some studies with customers of ours that, a ton of contaminated material that ends up on a recycling floor and ends up going through only to be sent to the landfill can end up costing upwards of $250 a ton in some areas of the country once you consider all the costs. And that brings down throughput. It potentially causes downtime for the facility. It may cause, safety risks to those workers. So, we think about all the classic things that you would when you're putting in a facility. It's just there's more of it. So, you think about
got
safety
it.
and the role of the people. You think about how you're going to maintain the material, and you think about how you're going to control the factors outside of that facility to make sure that it's running at peak efficiency. Um, but there's no shying away from the conversation. People are excited about the potential that these facilities can bring, and there's plenty of case studies out there of how they've been successfully done. I will say that the opportunity to gain the benefit of these doesn't stop when the plant opens. It's a consistent
Mm.
integration of best practices into your operation. great operators probably already know all of this, so I'm not saying anything new. But it's yeah, no, it's a great trend to be seeing.
And we actually do have a question about contamination, which you mentioned. Like we know that's an issue. Just at our staff meeting earlier this morning, we were talking about recycling, and someone was like, "Did things not get recycled only because of contamination?" And of course, we explained it all. We just put out a report on contamination for people that are managing that. But I think with some of this technology, we can even identify the most common types of contaminants, right? To better target messaging to the community and educate right there. I know sometimes there's people out there inspecting the contents of the recycling carts to make sure that, the right things are in there. So I could just imagine like what we could do with AI and automation here, right? With the
Mhm.
contamination. So, the question is, what barriers do you see in integrating more of the data and AI into this like operations, right? And I guess to reduce the contamination.
Yeah, and maybe not just targeted at contamination, but I think it's this is where people can think about their entire tech stack, right? So
Okay.
AI can be applied in a very targeted way. We see, standalone AI services, and especially in MRFs, right? There's video analysis that are helping alert upstream in a picking line. Hey, we're getting a lot of plastic in the paper stream or something like that, right? So that's a very targeted use case. More broadly, we're seeing AI used to understand the data around like consumer behavior or customer behavior more, and that really requires being connected in typically SaaS systems that can
Oh,
interact with
okay.
AI. And
Got
so
it.
AI is only as good as the data that it has access to, the training that it's been given, right? The language model that it's leveraging. If you have isolated systems that are maybe on-prem or have are not that don't have good clean data, you're probably not going to get the greatest result from your AI. So we encourage people to not only look at AI projects but also look at your tech stack, your infrastructure, your data cleanliness, right? The reliability of that data. Those are all challenges you're going to kind of have to face as you look to get good results from an AI implementation or any technology implementation for that matter.
Right. There's another question here. I think it's someone starting on the journey, the tech journey here. Like, do you have like some tips or like where to start? I think this is, someone who's like, oh my goodness, I just don't even know. I want to start on this.
Yeah.
What would you recommend?
I love benchmarking against peers. So everyone in the industry would look out and see another city, another company, maybe they're in your area, maybe they're not, that looks kind of like you. They do the type of things you do, they have the type of operations you do, they deal with the seasonality or the the logistical challenges that you do. And if you can find one of those that has implemented technology, go talk to them and find out how they did it. Why did they do it, right? What was their justification for it? What was the business case? What was the organizational change management that they had to deal with? How did they address adoption with their employees? How did they address adoption, maybe if it was public facing right into their communities? But I love benchmarking, talking to peers, being connected into the industry, not just a plug for SWANA and the wonderful ways that you provide members to connect with others. But just asking questions and being curious and finding somebody who's done it well that you can kind of emulate or learn from their mistakes, however that may go, is a great place to start.
Yeah. Oh my goodness, like we're at time, which I can't believe. I think we're more than happy to answer any other questions. James, I don't know if you can pop our emails in there or I don't know if I want to put up the screen again, but whatever you think there for people to contact us. I think we could have chatted a lot longer than the 45 minutes session. I know I have some more questions myself, just in terms of like that circular economy and the data there. And I think to your earlier point, it isn't just let's collect the material and it ends. It really is that full cycle, right? And just thinking broadly of what we could do with the data and the technology on that circular front, I think is really, really important. So Geoff, I'm going to turn it to you for some final words.
Yeah, no, just a great appreciation to SWANA, to everyone that makes up SWANA. These organizations, as we've talked about, is made up of people in a wonderful community of passionate, folks that are working to provide essential services, but increase the value of the materials that we manage. I love this industry. It's where I've spent my entire career, and so happy to hopefully make some new connections today. Stay in touch with me. You can find us on LinkedIn as well. AMCS has a lot of great content to talk about all the different areas that we impact the industry. But again, it's the industry that makes us tick. So, just a big thanks to everyone and for all the hard work that you do every day to keep America and Canada moving.
Yes.
So yeah, no, it's been a lot of fun today, Amy. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Yeah, and I echo all of that, and thank you all for joining. We really do appreciate it. As we said at the beginning, for being here, you will get one credit, one PDH, as we like to say, professional development hour for joining. So we hope you have a takeaway to come back. We're more than happy to continue the conversation. We'd actually love to. We like to hear what is going on, the opportunities and challenges. So please do reach out. Thank you so much, and we hope you have a great day.
Thanks, everyone.